We are men of action. Lies do not become us.
So hey guys, welcome back to RBB. Today I want to talk about 4 different examples of incidents that have happened that have caused me to sort of recalibrate at different times over the years where I was at with regard to safety. And the intent is for you to be able to take this information and put it in your toolkit and learn from other people's mistakes or almost mistakes. The first example comes from a large agency on the West Coast. Many years ago, when the officers were issued new holsters that weren't very intuitive, these holsters had retention devices on them that didn't make a lot of sense, but the officers were mandated to carry them. And so, as you can imagine, officers are going to adapt and overcome. And this situation happened when one of the officers in that situation was trying to learn the holster. They happened to be in uniform and working an off-duty job. And as they were standing a post in uniform with that holster on, the officer was drawing his firearm and defeating all of the retention straps and just bringing the gun up slightly and then putting the gun back in. So the whole point was to defeat the retention devices and then draw the gun just a little bit, and the gun muzzle always stayed in the holster. Well, at some point during that little practice session that he was having, while he was also supposed to be focusing on observing people coming and going in the area, he happened to defeat all the retention devices, and somehow his finger inadvertently got into the trigger guard, and as he went to push the gun back into the holster, his finger made contact with the trigger and the gun went off and it pumped around into his leg. This startled the officer, and he flinched, and he actually pumped another round into that same leg. So the moral of that story is, number one, it could happen to you, it could happen to me if we're not paying attention. And that's the second part of this, is pay attention to what you're doing. If you're going to train, train with focus. And if you're not training and practicing with focus, then step away from it, put the guns away, and go do whatever else it is you need to do, and come back to the training and the practice when you can focus on it. The second instance actually comes from the competitive shooting world, where over the course of one season, I saw a new competitive shooter come in, and he started out like most of us did. He started out in C class, and he, within the course of 1 year, progressed from C class all the way to A class, and he was literally knocking on the door of master class. Unfortunately, during one of his practice sessions, it was after he had had a couple of adult beverages, and while he was practicing, he ended up inadvertently shooting the front portion of his index finger off because he wasn't paying attention to what he was doing, and obviously he was inebriated. So the moral of that story is, guys, when the adult beverages or whatever your legal drug of choice is, when before those things start to come out, the guns get put away. So this third example comes from the shooting range, where these officers had been shown how to draw and, while facing up range, draw the gun and fire at a target that is downrange. The range had been cleared. They were allowed to do this drill. And so after having done it several times in practice, they loaded up the guns and they went hot. One of the shooters, during one of the repetitions, actually drew the firearm and was intending to very quickly bring the gun back and fire behind him at the target. Unfortunately, he didn't fully clear the holster. And so as he's trying to go backwards, the gun got caught on the holster and it caused him to lose his grip on the gun. The gun started to fall, and his decision was to actually try and catch the gun before it hit the ground. In catching the gun, he inadvertently put his finger inside the trigger guard and engaged the trigger and caused the gun to go off, which pumped around into his leg. There's probably a lot of morals to that story, and I'm sure I'm going to see them in the comments down below. Very obvious point is, if a gun falls, let it fall. Just like sharp knives, don't try to catch them, let it fall. There's enough internal safeties in modern day firearms that dropping it is much safer than trying to grab it as it's falling and then have something actually happen. This last example actually happened to me many years ago. I was on a tactical team. We were getting ready to serve a search warrant, and we were at a certain point where we were going to load our guns, do a communications check on our radios. We were going to do a jump check to make sure we didn't make any noise. I had my handgun in a holster on my vest. There was no magazine in the gun, and I hadn't loaded it yet, so I decided I was facing an open field. It was like 4:30 in the morning, and so I brought the gun up, and I was actually going to press off one good shot, so I put my finger on the trigger, and I started to take up the slack, and then I caught myself and said, you know what, all guns are always loaded, let me check. And I looked inside, and oh my God, there's a bullet in there. Now, if I had completed that trigger press, there would have been a loud noise where there wasn't supposed to be a loud noise. And that would have obviously stopped the search warrant mission that we were going out on. And I probably would have been removed from that tactical team, and that would have been deservedly so, because I knew better. Now, I didn't stop what I was doing and go, hey guys, I almost ruined our whole mission here. I didn't say anything like that, but I tell you this now to tell you that the more you handle firearms, the more dangerous you become, for two reasons. First off, just by law of averages, the more often you handle a firearm, the more potential there is to make a mistake. And the second thing about that is the more we handle firearms, the more we start to think that maybe we're too cool for the rules. And that was part of my hiccup, was that I was going too fast. Those 4 examples are what you can take with you, and we'll catch you right back here next time on ranges, backstops, and berms.